This is the truth about Apple versus Linux audio. Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you the differences between the pipe-wired jack audio system on Linux and the aggregate device system on Apple. And I'll begin with an honorable mention of Windows, although it's not worth mentioning. On Windows, there's an ASIO for all driver that you can use for these same purposes, but it's a hit or miss. Most of the time, it's a miss, so... Point number 0, availability. On macOS, the audio MIDI setup is a built-in tool. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to configure anything for it to work. It's just there and it works. Most Linux distributions these days have PipeWire as the default audio system. But if you want to use it with an easy graphical interface, you may want to install QJackCTL or PipeWire Graph or some other graphical tool. All tools are not created equal. I would recommend use QJackCTL with PipeWire for the most flexibility. On some Linux distributions, this is already pre-installed and configured for you. You don't have to do anything. You just open it and it works. On others, it's not configured. So for that point, I will give it to Apple. Now we can get into it. Point number 1. Can I combine multiple interfaces together to use them all in a certain program? Yes, I can do that with an aggregate device, make one big device. And I can also do that with PipeWire jack. I can use multiple interfaces to connect them to different things. So Apple gets a point and Linux gets a point. Point number 2, can I hot plug interfaces? So I have an audio interface right here. Can I unplug it and plug it again and have everything working without closing any programs or restarting anything? Yes, I can do that with an aggregate device on Apple. I have audio right now on this. The interface is on. I will unplug it. And I don't have any audio anymore. The interface is off. I'll plug it in again. And here we go. It should turn on right now and it will appear right here. And I have audio again in 1, 2, 3. Hey, hey. Okay, it's good. Yes, I can do that with jack on Linux. Hey, hey. 1, 2. There's audio. There's audio. There's nothing right now. You can't hear anything. The interface is offline. I'll plug it in again. It will turn on phantom power. And here you go, it appears again. And now you should be hearing my voice again. Hey, hey, 1, 2, 3. So Apple gets a point and Linux gets a point. Point number 3. Can I connect programs or browser audio, not just hardware interfaces? In the first point, I showed you that you can combine multiple hardware interfaces or even virtual sound cards like Black Hole Audio. But right now I'm talking about actual programs like Reaper or OBS or your browser. Can you see that as a device and connect it to something? On Apple, you cannot do that. Aggregate device is limited to actual devices like hardware or virtual sound cards, but not programs. On Linux, everything is available. Even my mouse is available as a MIDI device. So you can connect your browser audio. Let's say I have YouTube opened. I can connect it into Reaper or into OBS. I can connect audio from Reaper to Zoom into it and out of it. So not only the browser, but each tab of the browser can be a different audio device. So for that point, 0 to Apple, 1 to Linux. Point number 4, can I change the device settings, meaning bit depth, sample rate, buffer size, clock source? On Apple, you can select the main device that will be the clock source. You can do the same thing on Linux. On Apple, you can change the sample rate. On Linux, you can change the sample rate. On Apple, you don't have an option to change the buffer size in the aggregate device as a whole. On Linux, you can change the buffer size. On Apple, you have a drift correction checkbox, so the devices don't fall out of sync. On Linux, you don't have that as an explicit option. So in my opinion, no one is better than the other. So I'll give a point to Apple and a point to Linux. Point number 5 is reordering the number of the sockets depending if the device is online or offline. And this is incredibly important for me. On macOS, with the aggregate device, if you unplug your interface, everything that is below it moves up. So if the built-in microphone on my MacBook has input number 5 and I unplug my external audio interface, now the internal microphone is number 1. Whereas on Linux, the order does not change. Hey, hey, 1, 2. On Linux, if I unplug the audio interface, I will just lose audio, but nothing will take its place. I can manually, of course, connect things, but automatically nothing happens. I'll plug it in again. Hey, 1, 2. Hey, hey, 1, 2. And it appears again. And in a moment, I should have audio. And now I have audio. And it's connected to the same place. Nothing got connected in its place. Everything stays exactly like I set it to be. So here in the patch bay, the way I organized them and connected them, they stay the same. So on macOS, if I unplug my interface, the headphones output will all of a sudden become the built-in speaker output. Whereas on Linux, if I unplug my audio interface, I will just not have audio on the headphones, but it will not automatically send audio out of built-in speakers. For casual home use, you may find the Apple thing more convenient. For more professional use, where you need consistency, Linux wins big time. So for this point, I will give 0 to Apple and 1 to Linux. Point number 6 is a persistent patch versus having to change the aggregation. And what I mean by that is on Apple, if you want to add a device or remove a device for certain situations, you have to remember to add it again later because you're literally changing the settings of the aggregate device itself. Whereas on Linux, you can do live patching, you can connect and disconnect things as you please, but you will have a saved patch file that when you launch Jack again, it will automatically load that patch file and you don't have to remember to return things to how they were previously. So for this, I will give 0 to Apple and 1 to Linux. Point number 7 is device name ID versus port ID. And what I mean by that is when you plug your device in, I have this audio interface, it's plugged into my computer. How does the computer recognize it? Is it by the name of the interface or by which port it is plugged into on the computer? On Apple, if I plug it into one port, it sees the interface. If I unplug it and plug it into the other port, it thinks it's a different interface. So the interface will become offline and the new one will appear with the same name, but it doesn't recognize that it's literally the same device. If I plug it into a different port on the same hub, it also thinks it's a different device. So when I make my aggregate device on macOS, I have to try all the ports and save the aggregate device with all the ports just in case I decide to plug my interface into a different port this day so that it would still recognize it and not think that it's a different device. On Linux, it doesn't matter. It recognizes the device from the name of the device, regardless into which USB port I plug it in. So for this point, I'll give 2 zeros to Apple and I'll give a 1 to Linux. Point number 8, and I think this point is perhaps the biggest difference between macOS and Linux. It's that on Linux, you can actually connect devices to each other. So I could connect the outputs of the browser into Reaper, out of Reaper into OBS. On macOS, you cannot do that. The aggregate device is simply to combine multiple interfaces as one device to pretend that all of these are one device, and then you can choose that device in Reaper or some other program and use all the available inputs and outputs. But you cannot connect the different inputs and outputs to each other with the aggregate device. It simply combines the interfaces as one. Whereas on Linux, you can connect whatever you want to whatever else you want. Your imagination is the limit. So for the flexibility, I'll give 0 to Apple and 1 to Linux. So in the comments below, let me know which one is better for you. You may not need all the flexibility of Linux. You may just want the simplicity of Apple. I try to be as fair as possible. I use both. Windows, forget about it. It's a hot mess. In my experience, Jack is overwhelmingly more flexible than Apple when it comes to routing and patching things. But the learning curve is quite steep. macOS, on the other hand, is really simple and it just works, but you are more restrained. You cannot use audio from browsers or from other software, just audio interfaces. So let's say I'm doing a live stream mix and I'm sending audio over the network from Reaper on one computer to OBS on another computer. Just in case the network audio fails, I want to have an analog connection from the computer to the video switcher. I can simply use an aggregate device on macOS and combine the audio interface of the mixer with the built-in audio interface or another small audio interface to send an extra output to that. But if I want to send audio so many different places with complicated routing, I'll definitely choose Jack. So which one will you choose? Let me know in the comments. Have you ever used Jack with Pipewire, or have you ever used an aggregate device? If you learned something new, if you liked this video, make sure to hit the like button. Click on the video on screen right now to learn how to use Jack, and I'll see you there.